On this week's full-time roundup, Champions League doesn't disappoint. The midweek Premier League games shine some light on three teams going in different directions, and we get you ready for Europa League and the weekend ahead with predictions. Full-time roundup starts right now. On this week's full-time roundup, welcome in. It is a 7:30 record again for me and Matt. Matt, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. I see the sun rising to my right here as I look out my window. It is early, but it's good to be back with you. I missed Sunday. Thank you to you and Harrison for keeping and holding down the fort. Obviously, some great action to talk about with a big result for your Liverpool, but ready to jump into some Champions League. As even though Sunday was great, yesterday was just as great, and Tuesday as well. And it's been a whirlwind of a week with games on Monday and games Tuesday, games yesterday. And of course, we'll have Europa League today on Thursday. So never ends. It never ends, Daniel.
Well, that is true. It never ends, but we also have an international break on Monday. So, the last two slates, you could call it, last weekend and this midweek, and then hopefully this weekend as well, will be absolutely fire. It's already been great. So many storylines to come from, and I'm excited to kind of break them down with you today.
Yeah, yesterday was one of the best afternoons of Champions League I've seen in a while. And, not to discredit Tuesday, which was just as good as well. And, Arsenal going into penalties. It wasn't as exciting of a game, I would say. Of course, the result and just going into, extra time with Arsenal and Porto, which we can start there and kind of dive right in. And it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't exciting. It wasn't as back and forth as some of the games yesterday were, but Arsenal, they had a huge monkey off their back with advancing here to the round of 8 quarterfinals. And boy, do we have a really good slate of quarterfinal matchups to be drawn by the computer here shortly. But, it's going to be exciting. And Arsenal do escape. They were down 1-0 going into this one at home. And again, they didn't look great. A couple of nice plays throughout the game. Of course, Trossard's goal, which just a class little, through ball through and kind of puts in the bottom corner right before the half. And then Porto played an outstanding defensive game from top to bottom, just exactly what you were expecting them to play and take it all the way through to penalties, where Arsenal, you would have expected, especially given, the quote unquote curse of Arsenal in the Champions League. You would have thought Porto might have snagged it there, but Arsenal gets it done and advances for the first time in, I believe, a decade.
Yeah, decade or decades, you could say, of just hurt, of not being able to go through in the stage, and they finally are able to get it done. I mean, the squad had a couple Manchester City players who have been there before, but a lot of them have not been there before, and you could kind of see it as the game started. You could see the nerves, even when they were at home at the Emirates. I'm sure the atmosphere was a little bit nervous but raucous at the same time. But yeah, they were able to get it done at the end of the day, and Arsenal haven't been able to usually get it over the finish line in a long time with any competition that matter other than the FA Cup. One of my things I kind of decided during this game was that Martin Odegaard can take this Arsenal team wherever they want to go if he can stay healthy. He is not only the best Arsenal player they have, but he's one of the better, I would say, top 5 players in the Premier League at this rate. And I mean, he created that Trossard goal. He's absolutely magic. And when me and you talked about Arsenal, and we don't really know, like when they had that blip in form in probably January, it was because he was out. I didn't even really think about that until now. But yeah, they need him if they want to keep going in the Champions League, as well as win the Premier League. But in terms of this single match, Arsenal probably should be winning this match by more. But on the flip side, Sergio Conceição and Porto played a magnificent game over 2 legs. What a game plan it was. It worked, and they are just so unlucky to crash out in penalties. And what a heartbreaking way to end your Champions League run, I guess, in 2024.
Yeah, you never enjoy penalties, regardless. It's just one of the worst ways to end any type of tournament or any type of competition, regardless of what's at stake. Of course, this was pretty big stakes here, but yeah, I mean, you got to give them a lot of credit. The way that they played this game, they were in it. They had an opportunity, kind of punch back when Arsenal would come at them. You mentioned Arsenal being a little bit nervous in the first half, I think, and it almost got even more nervous for them when Evan Nilsson almost put one in the back of the net early on and kind of would have put them up 2-0 on aggregate. And again, they had their chances. They weren't without opportunities. They had some counterattacks, which is exactly what they were looking for. Arsenal weren't too great up front. They weren't really going to scare them. It didn't seem like they were. Given how good Arsenal have been in the Premier League and crushing teams of late, we saw this even at the game in Porto, where it was just a different game, whether that was the way that Porto set up or just the stakes of the Champions League. And so this Arsenal team wasn't fully up to snuff yet again on Tuesday. And yet Porto, like you said, played an absolutely perfect game plan. They had their chance to kind of, snag one away and then penalties. And you mentioned, Martin Odegaard, how important he is. Another player that's just important for Arsenal, Daniel, and we've talked about him a little bit. I don't think he gets enough credit as he deserves, is Declan Rice, who, of course, takes the ultimate penalty for Arsenal and puts it in. And of course, David Raya makes a save afterwards to clinch it. But that's a lot of pressure for a player that hasn't been in this role very often, and obviously had a great performance and was a great, tremendous player at West Ham, an English international. So he has experience at a very high level. But you talked about inexperienced players in the Champions League. I mean, West Ham wasn't even sniffing the Champions League from his time there. So it's not like he's had, a plethora of experience, and to put the ball down and step up and hit that penalty the way he did just shows you how confident he is. And between him and Odegaard, they have a really, really good core there in the midfield that's going to drive them as far as they can go.
Whoa. We're talking about the Europa League or Europa Conference League champions right now. So let's take a step back here, Matt, with the West Ham slander. They were in a final, a very important
the very first one too. So yeah,
final. But yeah, I mean, he's Arsenal's 100 million man. And I would reckon Odegaard's probably around that as well. So they have two absolute Rolls Royce players in the middle of the park, and that is an excellent core for any occasion. Declan Rice also recently has stepped up in big ways, especially in the Premier League. He scored 2 goals in a row that were really important goals. Actually, no, not one was not important. It was against Sheffield, but the other one was against Brentford. But yeah, no, he's been great. The only other thing I kind of conclusion that came from this game for me is, all right, well, Sergio Conceição, you've been at Porto for a while now. You've proved how good of a manager you are. Where could you go? And I think without a doubt, it would be Italy. And I kind of want him to test the waters somewhere else, because he's shown time and time again he can punch above his weight. So if you give him a competent roster to work with, not in Portugal, then I think this man could cook. And he's only 40. He's in the low 40s, so he's still a young manager, so he has plenty of time to do this stuff. But I just, I'd like to see him more in a bigger league, just so I can see his game plans more, because what a coach he is.
What a coach he is, for sure. And there's obviously ample opportunities open this summer. We'll see what happens. It would be an interesting fit for him. Of course, you never know, some of these managers, especially, of his stature, they may like to be comfortable in Portugal. Of course, he's, Portuguese and kind of wants to be playing around there. And I think an opportunity, not only 2 references, one stepping up and also a potential place where he could fit, to kind of tie back into both of your last points, is Barcelona, who on Champions League nights, Daniel, they stepped up and they put Napoli, it was not easy, but this Barcelona team looked really good at some points throughout the match. And then, they kind of had a little bit of nervousness there at the middle of the match as Napoli get one back. But Barcelona, boy, did they need this. They advanced to the round of 8 quarterfinals again. I don't know why it's too early for me to be referencing rounds of 8s or quarterfinals. It's the quarterfinals that they've advanced to, but they get a huge goal, back-to-back goals, essentially, if you will, from Fermin Lopez. And then right away, João Cancelo, who finishes off a ball from Rafinha off the post. And it almost seemed like cruising from there. And then, of course, like I said, Napoli get one before the half and makes things a little bit nerve-wracking for Barcelona. But then Robert Lewandowski, the man that you bring in for the reason to score goals, gets one to seal it, and Barcelona advance. And this was a huge, huge win for Xavi and his men.
No doubt. They had some really nice link-up play. It kind of had shades of an old Barcelona team with the first 2 goals, and they were bang, bang, right? One went in, and then immediately they put the foot on the pedal and got another one within 3 minutes, that's what good teams do. It's like a boxing match. You throw one jab and you try to get 2 more when the other team's guard is down. Now, I think you mentioned this is a big win for Barca. I think it certainly is with the current state of the squad. The squad is very injured, and they are just not, they're relying on young kids a lot. Lamine Yamal played today. He is just, I don't even know. I've run out of adjectives to describe how good he is in this team. But Fermin Lopez, another player that they've started to lean on, as more recently, I like to call him Gavi 2.0, because he just runs for days. But yeah, Napoli, I thought they'd be able to keep it closer, to be honest. I was a little disappointed by, Barca pulling away, but at the end of the day, Xavi seemed to get his game plan right and was able to outcoach Calzona, which I feel like he honestly rarely outcoaches the team. I think the team just usually has moments of brilliance, but I have to give Xavi this one, and they have a big game at the weekend as well. So we'll see if they can keep the good vibes rolling.
Yeah, you mentioned, of course, Xavi outcoaching here in this instance. Of course, sets the lineup up with a youngster like Fermin Lopez at the gate who gets the goal, then brings on Sergio Roberto late for Fermin, who assists Robert Lewandowski's goal as well. So, moves like that. Of course, you also mentioned, Lamine Yamal. What can we say? Like you said, I've been talking and raving about him all season, been perennially one of my young players of the week, and he just continues to get better, Daniel. Even you look at this and how he got stronger throughout the game for a 17-year-old in Champions League at this stage, this much pressure on him. Of course, he scored the wonder goal on the weekend, and the expectations just continue to rise on this young kid. And for him to be in there for 90 minutes in the Champions League, when Barcelona are arguably at that tipping point for them as far as where they can go and where they need to go, not only financially for the club, but also just expectations from a Barcelona perspective. It's so important for him to continue to grow. You do hope and wonder if they're pushing him too hard. Of course, we've seen that with Pedri and Gavi, and you hope that they learn their lesson in the past. But when the kid is playing the way he's playing, it's hard to leave him out, especially given the injuries that they have and what's at stake. So you just wonder, where his ceiling is, and can they kind of start to slow things down for him a little bit? You don't want to stunt that growth, but you also want to be mindful of his age and just where he is. I mean, he just got braces, like I think, over the course of the season. So to put that into context, he's just such a young kid so much going for him. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes. And I think also, the other piece of that is the flip side is İlkay Gundogan. I last couple of games I've been watching him, I haven't been super impressed with İlkay and what he can do. I think he's playing a different role in Barcelona's squad than he was at Man City, where I think he's being asked to dictate the play and to run the midfield. And I don't know if he has that exact quality. We haven't seen that either with Germany as well when he's been asked to do that for the national team. Of course, for Manchester City, he's more of a support player. He obviously has great skill on the ball and vision, but it wasn't like he was running the midfield there. Of course, that was Kevin De Bruyne and Rodri at City. And so it is interesting to me to see kind of where he's been fitting. And of course, that was a big step that Xavi wanted him to kind of come in and fill that void. And to me, it hasn't really worked that well. And it'll be interesting to see going forward if he continues to be that main guy in the midfield, or if you can look at, a Gavi kind of filling in there. Hopefully Pedri gets, extended period of time with health. So it'll be interesting to see going forward what this team looks like, especially as they advance to some of the more difficult teams in the knockout stages.
You mentioned two really interesting points, so I want to cover both here real quick. Number one, since we're talking about Gundogan right now, we've mentioned it before. At City, he was the player. Rodri is the one who dictates play. He finds the pockets of space next to Haaland and then works off Haaland. And that is what he's good at. And especially with Frankie out, he's being asked to be more of a pivot midfielder, because Andreas Christensen is playing the CDM and he can't dictate that play. So he's being asked to play a different role. I would say they're probably asking him to play multiple roles, to be honest. But yeah, that's not what he is best suited at. But Oriol Romeu has been dreadful, and he hasn't played a game for months because of how bad he is. And he was supposed to be that guy to replace Sergio Busquets for the time being. And so, number one, it's hard to replace Sergio Busquets. We all know that. Arguably my best center defensive midfielder of all time. But, that's just not his role. He shouldn't do it with Germany either. It's a really tough role. You have to have unique qualities. I'm not saying he doesn't have those qualities, but that's not what he does best. So if they can find someone to do that in the meantime for him, that would be great, but they probably won't, just with the state of the squad. Fermin Lopez is going to play that Gundogan role, and he's going to have to play further back on the pitch. Now, the Lamine Yamal talk. Me and Harrison talked about this on Sunday's show, and we mentioned Ansu Fati, Gavi, Pedri. You have João Felix on a loan on the bench. Just use his legs. Like, seriously. I mean, Lamine Yamal has gained like 10 pounds and grown inches, like a couple inches in this year. Like, he's literally growing as we speak. Like, I'm just scared Xavi and the next manager are going to stunt his growth and his potential by playing him every game. A 16, 17-year-old should not be playing this many minutes in a man's game. I'm just going to go out there and say it. So, like, if you're 18-year-old, that's different. But if you're 16, 17, that's unacceptable, in my opinion. Another player he's playing a lot recently, Pau Cubarsí, and what a game he had. And he has been playing every single minute as of late over veterans who they signed this offseason. Use them. Do not overuse the La Masia Academy. Obviously, we want them to play. We like when the kids play, but to an extent, Xavi, to an extent. I don't think you were playing in Barcelona, Xavi, at 16, 17 years old. I don't think it's fair to ask these guys to go 90 minutes twice a week for a whole season. I just disagree with that.
Yeah, and Cubarsí, another 17-year-old as well, like you mentioned, and just been fantastic in the back there alongside.
He's so good.
He really is, and alongside Araujo, who, again, that defense, if they can keep it, they have a core there. It'll be interesting to see what happens with a player like Jules Koundé in the summer, because he wants to play more in that center defensive back position, and he's just not going to do it, given what they have in the middle there. Now, I do want to switch over quickly. Of course, we touched a lot about Barcelona as they advance, and just want to get your quick thoughts here. Is this the last time we're seeing this Napoli squad the way it is constructed currently with the players of Victor Osimhen and Kvaratskhelia and those type of players? Of course, we've talked about their poor form in the league, and they're not going to make the Champions League, looks like, next season, and those players, probably a couple of them, are on their way out. Is this, again, like I said, the last that we're seeing this constructed Napoli side as is? And if so, where do we see some of these players like Victor Osimhen, falling into place next year? Of course, they probably will be in Champions League, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Napoli is gonna have a major rebuild on their hands in the summer. Zelensky, he's going to enter. Osimhen will probably go to the Premier League, probably Chelsea, but that means he wouldn't be in the Champions League. So I don't know if, honestly, he'll want to do that. I would say Manchester United, Arsenal, or Chelsea. He also could make a move to PSG if he wanted to. I think he'll rather go to the Premier League over Ligue 1. I think, Marcus Rashford or Luis Diaz could make that PSG move instead. When it comes to Kvaratskhelia, he's definitely gone as well. His options for where he could go are fairly unlimited. If Barca had the money, I would say they'd splash the cash, but they don't, so that probably wouldn't happen. Don't count out Liverpool in this one. I could Michael Edwards back in as the director. I think he loves this guy, and if we sold Luis Diaz, he could be that replacement. That's just a little shout there, but yeah, no, I think at the end of the day, this Napoli talk, I think it just shows how good of a manager Spalletti was. Like, obviously, this roster is good and this team is good. They made it out of the Champions League group stages, but they were for real last year. Like, really, really, really good. And Spalletti left, and they've had 3 managers, and they cannot implement the feelings of past, I guess you could say. So, number 1, Spalletti, amazing manager. Number 2, do not count Italy out in the Euros this summer, because I think he has something up their sleeve, and no one is talking about them, which is exactly where he wants to be at this moment.
Yeah, he's a great manager. It will be interesting to see if his style translates this quickly for Italy in the Euros. So we'll keep an eye on that. Of course, that tournament coming up in June and July. Daniel will potentially be over there in Germany and give us some coverage in person in Germany this summer. So look forward to that. I want to touch on the big game yesterday last, just because it deserves a lot of attention given what was at stake, the way it played out. But want to quickly get your thoughts on PSV and Borussia Dortmund. Of course, Borussia Dortmund advance and at home in front of the yellow wall, 2-0 in the game, 3-1 on aggregate. We continued, though, Daniel, to be perplexed by this team and what Edin Terzic does week in, week out. Not just Edin Terzic, but just the players on the pitch as well. It's a helter-skelter, Jekyll and Hyde type of team, and they still didn't look that great even in this matchup, but they advance and move on to the quarterfinals. And now, again, what we have in store for us as far as a draw is concerned is pretty tasty coming up.
Yeah, I was really struggling between these 2 games, which one was more disappointing for me. I think I'm leading Inter here, but Edin, I'm disappointed first with PSV. I think they outplayed Dortmund in both legs, and at the end of the day, they just couldn't put the ball in the back of the net. And why they couldn't do that? Because they have a 34-year-old De Jong leading the line, who's great in the Eredivisie, but when it comes to Champions League knockout stages, that's not who you want to have leading the line. They had so many chances to score against this Dortmund team. Dortmund scored the early goal and just packed it in. I was like, no, we're good for the rest of the game. We're not interested in really going for it. And now we have a Dortmund team who has now reached the UCL quarterfinals twice with Terzic and have won a DFB Pokal. And for a manager who is that terrible, that is wild. Arguably the most successful Dortmund manager since Jurgen Klopp. And that's so contrary to reason for me. I've been really spiraling with that, because I saw a tweet last night about that. And I think you can caveat those 2 successes because Terzic came in during that season, and he also had Haaland, Jude Bellingham, and Sancho in their prime playing for him, so maybe it really wasn't Terzic. But Dortmund, I wanted them just to get knocked out for how terrible they were. They didn't deserve this at all. It was frustrating to watch. Terzic is obviously the farthest person from a tactical genius here. And I just cannot wait to see this roster coached by a better coach, because I actually think they have really good pieces. And this tie shouldn't have even been close. I mean, Inter lost to Atletico Madrid, and that's a big storyline. But Inter absolutely drubbed PSV 4-0 in the group stages. That's like the standard, in my opinion. And again, going back to PSV, sorry, I'm hopping around here. If you need a goal, and it's very apparent that your striker is not putting the ball in the back of the net, why are you waiting to put Ricardo Pepi in, who's averaging almost a goal a game and who has been chomping at the bit all season for this kind of moment? You wait to the 80th minute to put him in. Like, I just didn't understand the substitutions from PSV, and it left me with a very bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah, it was an interesting game, and you mentioned one player I want to touch on. Well, two players, of course, Ricardo Pepi getting in from the U.S. men's national team late, and of course also Serginho Dest playing full 90 here. So great experience for the Americans. Not the result that they want, but I want to touch on
Tillman too.
Yeah, that's true too, Malik Tillman. And but two players I want to touch on from Borussia Dortmund quickly. You mentioned Jadon Sancho. He got the opening goal 3 minutes into the game, kind of set the tone, and he's had a resurrection since he went back to Dortmund. He's just been playing fantastic, and the Jadon Sancho that we've expected and seen before he made the big move to Manchester United. Do you expect him to either return to Manchester United afterwards? Of course, he's on loan, so he's not out of contract with United. He's a United player, and if not, where does he go? Because I think a lot of people are just so confused and not sure what to expect from him off the field. But then when you see the talent on the pitch, it's just undeniable of how good this kid can be. Again, still a kid as well. Where does he fall into place? And then secondly, you've been touching on this player for so long. Marco Rosa comes in and just shows why he is still class and gets the second goal in this game. But first, touch on Jadon Sancho for a second, if you will.
Sancho, like Terzic, Ten Hag's on borrowed time at this rate. I would keep Sancho and let him have a new lease on life with a new manager and see how the preseason goes. If I'm in Manchester United, you already shelled out $75 million for him. You might as well see if he can be a player. Now, I think he is a completely different situation than Antony. We've seen Sancho on the biggest stage do wonderful things at Dortmund and in the Champions League. Antony, on the other hand, has not. So, two wingers that they spend a lot of money for. I think you keep one, you sell the other, and you keep Sancho, especially with his wage demands. I don't think many clubs are going to be looking to get him off your books, and he's getting paid a ton of money. So I actually think that Sancho will continue to be a United player after the season, if he likes it or not. And I think he can find that resurrection in the Premier League where he started out with Manchester City. So that's just my take on it. Now, just to clarify, Marco Reus. You said Marco Rosa, which we talk about a lot, so I understand.
Still early, yes, we do talk a lot about.
I know. But yes, he came on and he's been the player that Dortmund have relied on for a decade now, and he came and scored a huge goal. Actually, 2 goals. One was disallowed, which was a knick-knack offsides. I mean, you saw the line. I didn't see an offsides there, if I'm being completely honest. It's supposed to have the line, which the body part is offsides at the shoulder. It looked very level to me. I don't know about you. But yeah, so I'm going to give him a brace in this match because I thought both of those goals were valid goals. But yeah, we'll see if he signs a new contract and if he'll continue to be a Dortmund player or he'll make a move to another Bundesliga side, or he could go to MLS in the summer and enjoy a renaissance there if he wants to. He's getting up there in age, and I don't know. You like to see club legends stay, but not over welcome their stay, I guess you could say. And I'm not saying he is, but just looking for the future, maybe maybe he would be. So I don't know, especially with a new manager at the helm. I would imagine maybe he would make a new move somewhere else.
There is a squad looking for a right winger with a DP slot open. I'm just going to leave that out there. You never know, but we'll see what happens. One other point I wanted to make on this match, and you touched on it earlier a little bit, and we'll move on to the big matchup of the afternoon yesterday on Wednesday. It is just the gulfing class between the Eredivisie and a lot of the other leagues in Europe. You mentioned Inter, winning against PSV in the group stage 4-0, and of course losing 3-1 on aggregate to arguably a mid Borussia Dortmund side this season, not the Borussia Dortmund that we've expected, of course, with their form in the league and just kind of everything going on here. And it just proves that, the top 5 leagues are the top 5 leagues for a reason. And no disrespect to PSV or the Eredivisie, they've done tremendous work. And of course, they're going to win the league. They've kind of already won the league almost before Christmas with the way that they played, 15 plus points clear Feyenoord. So credit to them there. But you do see, especially at this level and this late in the tournament, the cream of the crop rising to the top. And it's a nice story had they advanced and they moved on, but arguably they probably were not going much further than the quarterfinals. Borussia Dortmund probably neither as well, but you never know with them who they get in the draw. But Daniel, the last game on Wednesday was a barn burner. It didn't feel like it was going to be that way, especially given the two teams that were playing, of course, Inter Milan and Atletico Madrid. You never know what you're going to get from Atleti and Diego Simeone's men. They could park the bus for 95 minutes if they need to. And this game was the complete opposite of that. It definitely started out a little slow. Inter get that first goal. And then Antoine Griezmann said, "Hold my beer," on the next kickoff. Puts one in the top corner to equalize it. And then from there, it was game on. And this game was back and forth. Inter had a chance with Marcus Thuram late in the second half. And then it felt like Atletico Madrid, I don't know why they don't play like this the whole way. They just full court press basically from 70th minute on, chance after chance. Memphis Depay gets the equalizer. They should have scored a Kelme's winner at the 93rd minute, an absolute, not a sitter, but right inside the box, probably 8 yards out, puts it over the top. And then in extra time, it was just as fun to watch. So I'm probably just as surprised as you are that Inter did not close this out, especially going up 1 in this one with a chance to really put it away with Thuram. But that's what happens when you don't put away good teams. And we talked about how different Atletico Madrid play at the Metropolitano, and you saw that, especially in the second half.
Yeah, I'm just so sad. And I'm not even an Inter fan. I've been glazing them for so long. I've made takes about them being the 3rd best team in the world. I actually looked at OptaStats, which is like a supercomputer soccer website. They agreed with my ranking of having them 3rd in the world. And then they go and do this. And I thought Inter was going to win. We talked about it on the betting show, so go check that out whenever. But 30 minutes before kickoff, I looked at the lineup, and then I saw Antoine Griezmann was starting. And I thought he wasn't going to make this game. I guess he was a game time decision. It wasn't really released. I didn't really see any information about it before. But when I saw that, I was like, well, shit, that's not good. And I wouldn't say he was the best player on the pitch, but he certainly looked back to his old ways. And I think he's the reason why Atletico stood any of a chance to win this, and they just grinded it out. And Memphis Depay at the end of the day was the unlikely hero, coming off the bench and playing better than Morata and scoring that goal in somewhere in the 80th minute to bring it to extra time. But I was just trying to go to bed at this rate last night, and then our good friend Ewan tweeted out, just absolutely invoking violence, saying, "What if I told you Serie A's only good team aren't even good?" And that sent me into a spiral for an hour where I didn't get much sleep because, number one, it bothered me because I was trying to figure out if I've been wrong this entire time or not. I come to a realization now, 12 hours after that tweet, that Inzaghi completely lost the plot. Completely lost the plot because they are a good team, and he rested on the 1-0 aggregate, and when they scored that first goal, they were completely just didn't respond, and Atletico responded right back to them. And then in the 80th minute, he goes and he takes off a lot of attacking talent and puts on very defensive substitutions. And the commentator even said, "Oh, I'm not really sure about this one. Atletico are knocking at the door now, and if they equalize aggregate wise, this is too defensive of a formation and setup to go and win it in stoppage time and in extra time, and as well as PKs." And that's what happened. The commentator literally spoke it into existence, and I had to agree with him here. For how much I've said so many good things about Inzaghi, I think he got this game completely wrong. But on the flip side, I'm happy with Simeone. He had tears in his eyes after the game. It's been a really bad month. I was even sort of calling for his head at one point during this rough stretch of form. And El Cholo always knows when to respond. He wore all black like a funeral, but it wasn't for his. It was for Inter's funeral. And at the end of the day, Diego Simeone got the game right, and he just stays in there, that scrappy mentality that he has. And Atletico are still in the Champions League somehow, some way.
Yeah, it was a tough one for Inter fans. Of course, you mentioned a couple ways to go here. Antoine Griezmann is just an absolute baller. Yeah, and there's really can't really state it enough. Of course, 8.8 on SofaScore rating with a goal here in this one, arguably the most important player on the pitch. And you weren't sure if he was going to play. He's missed the last couple of games in the league with a little knock. And so his importance of this roster, I think you kind of expected him to play, at least if he was maybe 80%, maybe they were saving him knowing that the league is kind of out of hand. They can still scrap and claw their way to fourth, especially if they play like this. But they know they're not going to win the league. And so they put a lot more importance on making sure Antoine was ready for this one. And then you mentioned some of those subs, Daniel, I don't disagree with you. I do think when you're still up 1-0 or you're up, essentially 1-0 on aggregate going into the 87th minute, you kind of expect an Italian team to historically, and again, Inter did this last year too, where they made it all the way to the final playing this way. And so I'm not as disappointed with Inzaghi the way that you are. Of course, you look at it now where they lose, and of course it's easy to Monday quarterback it and say, well, he definitely should have played a little bit more aggressively and kept some of those players on the pitch. But you also look at some of the subs that he made, and you're talking about taking off Dumfries for Demarian, or taking off a Bastoni, who's perennially one of your best defensive players. That to me was a little bit strange too, regardless of making them more offensive. Why not play a 5 in the back with those two players? So if anything, I think he could have even gone a little bit more defensive and really locked it down versus just, like for like essentially, and kind of keeping it there. But also, you also look at the subs, again, looking at SofaScore, all the subs that Simeone brought in outplayed the subs that Inzaghi brought in. Now, granted, that's probably given, the style of play and how Atleti's pressing and just going straight for it all the way through. But at the end of the day, you can still outplay them defensively if you play smart and you don't concede. And so I thought the game plan, especially on the road, you're looking at when you get the goal. Again, there was opportunity. Marcus Thuram could have put them up 2-0, game over right there. Even in the extra time, Lautaro Martinez had a header off a corner, puts it wide, also misses a PK. We've talked about him and how important it was for him to score in the Champions League if they were going to advance, and just given his form in Serie A, didn't do that. And now they're out again. So that, reiterates just how important that form can be at the highest level when you're playing against the best competition. Not to, again, discredit Serie A, but you're looking at just the best of the best of this tournament, and he just didn't step up here. And that's a concern for me going forward, as he didn't really do much in the World Cup for Argentina as well. Yes, great form, maybe the best goal scorer right now, domestically, but this is when the bright lights shine. This is when everyone is watching you, and he didn't deliver in 2 instances. And so that's a concern for me. But Atletico Madrid is, either way, this was a good matchup coming out of it, right? You had a good team here advancing to the quarterfinals that arguably on any given day can beat the remaining 7 teams. That's just what it is, right? Yes, right now maybe Atleti's not in their true form, but no one is going to want to go and play Diego Simeone's men twice. You can just ask Real Madrid. They've
very fair
them a couple times already in the league this season. So even if you're Manchester City and Pep Guardiola, you're saying, please don't give me Atletico Madrid in this draw. You could say the same about Inter as well. So it was a fair fight, a really close battle, 1-1 going into it, and that's kind of where it netted out. And then PKs again comes down to PKs, as it has a couple of times in these matchups here this round. And you're looking at the best team going through, and it's going to be a great quarterfinal draw. And I'm just looking forward to who we get, because there's 8 strong, world-renowned teams here. Of course, no Italian team left, unfortunately, which also gives an opportunity for a German team, I believe, and a Premier League team to get that 5th Champions League spot. So huge implications as well with Inter going out here that we'll have to keep an eye on going forward, because again, just opens up another spot for one of the other 4 leagues to have a 5th team.
Although the Champions League slate did not disappoint, we had other matches around the leagues that didn't disappoint as well. And we'll go ahead and just really briefly touch on Chelsea versus Newcastle. Chelsea win 3-2 in a wonderful Monday game. The game that sometimes you need on a tough Monday with work, and we had fireworks in this match. And man, Cole Palmer, 21 years old, 11 goals, 8 assists already this season. And I would say this isn't his first senior season, but it's one where he's finally gotten consistent minutes after making the move from City to Chelsea. And he's the Chelsea top goal scorer, and he is one of the best players or best young players in the Premier League at this rate. And I'm excited to keep having discourse on him compared to other young stars that are budding throughout the top 5 leagues. But I just wanted to at least give Cole Palmer his flowers today, and he was crucial in a goal and assist. And he was actually the young player of the week for me for the Full-Time Roundup podcast. Go check that out on YouTube whenever. But yeah, he's just been remarkable this season. And Nico Jackson's getting hot as well.
Yeah, Cole Palmer, just for what it's worth, as many goal contributions as Jude Bellingham this season with 19. So again, all the hype around Jude Bellingham, and you're looking at a player like Cole Palmer, yet he's on a lesser side.
Domestically, right?
Domestically. But still, you're looking at obviously the hype around Jude Bellingham, and deservedly so. With everything that's going on, he's at arguably the biggest club in the world with Real Madrid, and Chelsea having the struggles that they are, but yet there's some bright spots in this roster, Cole Palmer being one of them. You mentioned Nico Jackson having pretty decent form of late. You got a nice goal here in this game. It's still a work in progress with him. But overall, there's some nice pieces starting to take shape. Chelsea, of course, never make it easy. Even at 3-1, this game felt like it was still in the balance. And then Murphy puts an absolute worldie in the top corner and make it 3-2. And now I'm getting really nervous, just the way that we play and the lack of maturity that this side has, and the way to kind of close out games. It's growing pains. We've talked about it. It's a process. This is still another step for this team to learn how to finish a game. But even at 3-2 in, the last 5 minutes of the game, they're still trying to go for a goal. And it just drove me nuts that they were not going to the corner flag. And yes, it's not fun. It's not flashy. It's not $100 million type of play, but that's actually $100 million type of dollar play if you go and take care of business and go and make the right moves and sit in the corner and just kill a game off. And so again, this roster's, they're getting better. There were some moments in the game. The first goal for Alexander Isak, who had a fantastic finish, just came from an absolute howler of defensive play. Enzo Fernandez clearing it across the middle of the field. Malagusto, who's been fantastic, does a little bit of trying to play tricky in the midfield and loses it. And kind of a calamity of errors that lead to a really nice Alexander Isak goal. But again, this is a side improving, and they now sit 1 point behind Newcastle on the table, still in the bottom half and 11th with a game in hand, though. And on the flip side, of course, Chelsea, kind of finding some progression and finding some form and finding a pace of play under Poach. And Daniel, on the other side, we have a real problem with Newcastle, who are really slipping here. And we've talked about Eddie Howe. I think the hot seat's getting just extremely hot, though.
It is. We'll have to see with their game against Manchester City at the weekend in the FA Cup. Just like I said, the current state of the squad so injured, so I think they'll see out the season and then reevaluate. I think he is on borrowed time, though, for sure. The other Premier League game that we had was Luton-Bournemouth. And
which was yesterday during Champions League. Yeah,
a nice primer, if you will, right before Champions League. And what a roller coaster of emotions that game was. Luton go up 3-0, and then Bournemouth in the second half from 45th minute to 83rd minute score 4 consecutive goals to win the game. Luton had an excellent chance to actually get out of the relegation zone. At halftime, they were out of the relegation zone. Nottingham Forest was in the relegation zone, and then they completely lost the plot. Now, there was a storyline. We've talked about injuries a lot on the show. I have not realized how many Luton injuries there are currently, which makes what they're doing even more impressive. But, we've been very optimistic and have given their coach flowers, but I think him and his team completely lost the plot in that second half, and it's pretty unacceptable to get 4 goals consecutively scored on you with a 3-0 lead and lose the game. So I'm pretty disappointed if I'm a Luton fan. And if I'm a Bournemouth fan, I'm reveling in showing that on any given day, this side can go and do really good things.
Yeah, it's really tough to watch Luton do that. I know we're going to predict another massive game for them this weekend a little bit later in the show, but you almost deserve to go down, honestly, in my opinion, when you blow a lead like this.
Yeah.
3-0 on the road, no less. At home, if that would have been at home, God, holy moly. But on the road, you're up 3-0 in the Premier League, which is hard to do as it is. And then to concede 4 is just as hard. And yet they found a way to do that. And really you wanted them to get something out of this game. And again, when you have that type of collapse there, it's hard to look at that and say they're going to bounce back. And they have a huge game. We'll find out a lot more about this Luton side this weekend if they can find a way to kind of pick themselves off the floor and get a big result here against Forest. But that game, do I believe anymore is hard to kind of put my head around it, because that's just one of those performances that you had to have, and you kind of let that one slip away.
Yeah, and we'll get to the big implications for this weekend here shortly. Now, just a couple other storylines I'm just going to run through here. Sarri resigns after the latest Lazio loss to Udinese. It crashes out of the Champions League. I wouldn't call it crashing out, but loses in the Champions League. And then
kind of saw this coming, by the way.
We did. There's been hints of this for a while now, and so he has resigned. Don't really know who's taken over as interim manager, but we'll see where Sarri ends up in the future. He is a great coach, so I think he will still, this isn't the end for Maurizio Sarri, but you hate to see it happen this fashion. In another cup instance, Saarbrücken, we talked about around a month and a half ago, they beat Gladbach on Tuesday. In this game, I actually was able to watch a second of this game. It was torrential downpour. You couldn't even dribble because the ball would just stop. But Saarbrücken found a way in the 85th minute to go ahead and get a winner here, and they've progressed. Now, the Polkai is extremely intriguing because there's only one Bundesliga team left, and that is Bayer Leverkusen. Could pull off. They are still on treble watch here with the Bundesliga, the Europa League, and the Polkai. And, the competition is in a really good spot for them. So I personally have a future on them to win it, and I think they're going to do it. But I like the story of Saarbrücken, which is a third league team, and they will play a second division team in the semifinals. So it's definitely something to keep your eye on when it comes to the Cup and the Polkai. Another cup, PSG beat Nice handily in the Coupe de France. Um, Fairly expected, so we won't cover much about it. But I thought it was at least interesting. And then the international break, like I mentioned, is on Monday. So we will have some fun content coming your way, not only about the international games, but maybe that Thursday episode we'll do like a bonus episode since there won't be really any games next week. So wanted to at least plug a couple things before we jump in to our predictions. Let's go ahead and get started, Matt, with these. We love to do these. We'll also be including the storylines with them. And the first one we'll first be covering is Europa League, and later today. And the first one on the docket is Rangers versus Benfica, tied on aggregate at Glasgow. How do you see it turning out?
Oh boy, this will be a big statement for Rangers, who I believe are tied or 1 point behind Celtic in Scottish Premier League. Benfica though are too strong here. It's at home though for Rangers. I'm talking myself in and out of it. 1-0 Rangers. Okay, Rangers are up 2. I knew it's close between those two, as it always is. Yeah, 1-0 Rangers for me here.
I'm gonna go on the other side. I think Benfica win this game 2-1.
Perfect. Love it when we don't agree.
Go ahead and start Marcus Leonardo, and we won't have to sweat this match at all. He is the best striker on that Benfica side, and he finally got a start last game. And what did he do? Oh, crazy. He scored. It's like he does that every single game he plays off the bench. So go ahead and start Marcus Leonardo in this game, and I think Benfica will walk into another knockout stage. On the other side, we have Atalanta versus Sporting Lisbon at Atalanta. Probably the best game in the Europa slate. How do you see it going?
This being at home, I think Atalanta have a little bit of a leg up. There was such a good back and forth game in Lisbon last week. Last week. I can't believe they played both back to back. I think Atalanta had a chance to even take it there. And so, give me Atalanta 2-1 on this game, advancing 3-2 on aggregate.
Yeah, this is tough. I think this one goes to extra time. So I'm going to say 1-1 normal time. And I think Atalanta with the home. Actually, no. I'm going Sporting with the caveat that Victor Gyökeres starts this match. I think Sporting go through one way or another. He is just in lightning form. And I think he's going to be able to carry Sporting Lisbon to another knockout stage in Europa League. For the Conference League, had to throw a game in here. Villa Ajax stand 0-0, and it is at Aston Villa. Are you going to back Emery's side here? Or are you going to back Ajax?
Something didn't look right with Villa against Spurs on the weekend. Of course, getting drubbed by Spurs. I think Villa bounced back. I think they may have been saving themselves for this game, given that they have a little bit of a cushion against Spurs. I don't think they were intentionally losing that game, but I think they kind of took their foot off the gas a little bit, saving for this one to advance in the tournament. Give me Aston Villa at home, 1-0. I don't think it's convincing, but I think they get it done.
I also think Aston Villa, this is a wonderful get back on track game. And Ajax, as of late, have not been that good. With how good Villa are at home, I think they win handily. I'm going to say 3-1 Aston Villa win. That's what I said on the other pod, so I'm going to stay consistent here. Luton Forest. We talked about Luton before. This is a 6-pointer. Maybe Luton can quell those demons of Wednesday's game and win this game and get out of the relegation zone. Do you think that happens, or are you still going to back Forest here?
It's at home. Luton played totally different at Kenilworth Road. Man, that was such a heartbreaking loss yesterday, though.
It's a tough one.
It is a tough one, and I really want Luton to stay up. So I'm really having a tough time giving Forest 1-1. You would think Luton need to win this game if they're going to stay up. These are the type of games that they have to get max points on just to keep pace. So they're going to come out of the gates flying. Kenilworth Road's going to be absolutely crazy. If Forest can withstand the storm of the first 20 minutes, I think it's a 1-1 draw. So I'm going to go 1-1 draw. Yeah,
I'm going to agree with you here, unfortunately. 1-1. Actually, no, I'm going to go 2-2 draw here. but I will admit that this will probably be a draw here. Now, to go to the other Premier League game, we'll cover Fulham versus Spurs. Spurs on the road. They have a really good opportunity here to catch up with Aston Villa, who play West Ham on Sunday. Do you think Aston or Spurs are going to be able to get it done?
Fulham have been a tricky side. 3 wins in the last 5, sandwiched with 2 losses there. Spurs obviously played really well against Villa on the road. Ange Ball. 2-2 draw.
2-2 draw. I'm going to go a 2-1 Spurs win here. I think Spurs are going to be able to get it done at Fulham. Now, to go to the MLS real quick, Charlotte is on the road against Nashville. You are going to be involved with the Charlotte Soccer Show pre-match at Hotfly. So we wanted to include this because you will be, on the mic, not only for us, but on them on Saturday, which is very exciting for us. And so go say hi to Matt and talk shit about Chelsea if you see him and if you end up going to that match. But how do you see this game? And a little early prediction for you. Don't want to spoil the show, but how do you see this game going?
Yeah, no, it won't spoil my prediction. Of course, Nashville played last night in the CONCACAF Champions Cup and got pretty beat up by a Inter Miami-less Messi, although he played for 45 minutes. But I think it'll be an interesting match. We'll certainly cover it more in depth on Saturday before the show. Coverage from that area at Hopfly will be on at 8 o'clock, roughly around 8 o'clock. So join us there. Of course, I will be filling in for Daniel Bramlett, who will be in Nashville at the game itself. So it'll be John Hayes and I covering the game pre-game at Hopfly for Charlotte on the Charlotte Soccer Show. So yeah, I think it'll be an interesting back and forth game. I think Nashville will want to come out and redeem themselves for their performance in Fort Lauderdale. And we'll see what happens. And we'll of course preview that game on Saturday. So more to come then.
Absolutely. I'm going to say a 1-0 Nashville win. Don't think we have enough juice here to get the 3 points, but you never know. We also have some FA Cup action. The biggest game on the docket is United Liverpool. How do you see that game at Old Trafford?
Liverpool seem to be on a mission. So I think Jurgen Klopp will advance and continue the dream of a quadruple. If any team is going to knock them out, it would be Manchester United, just given the rivalry here. But I do think it's going to be a 2-0 win for Liverpool in this one.
Gotcha. Just other games, Chelsea play Leicester and City play Newcastle, as well as Coventry plays a team I'm forgetting right now, so apologies. I'm scrambling to find the FA Cup draw. But we'll move on to La Liga here. Barcelona are on the road against Atletico Madrid. Atletico Madrid obviously played, 90 minutes plus on Thursday or on Wednesday yesterday. Do you think they're going to have those tired legs? But both played this midweek. How do you think that match shakes out?
Both played midweek. And by the way, Coventry play Wolves, just to wrap that up.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Barcelona will get the win here. I think they've found something, and they're going to send the season out with a bang. I think they get a 2-1 win, and you're going to see a different Barcelona from here on out. I don't think they get La Liga title out of it, but a nice little turnaround for Xavi.
I'm going to say 2-2. 2-2. They share in the spoils, you could say. Now we have a Bundesliga doubleheader: Bayer versus Freiburg and Dortmund versus Frankfurt. A lot of implications for the top 7 of the table here. Do you think this is ho-hum for Bayer Leverkusen?
Better be, because I think they better be careful. Bayern Munich have found some type of form the last couple games. This title is not over. It seems like it's over.
It is over.
Well, we'll see. If Bayer don't take care of business against Freiburg, the door opens a little bit for Bayern Munich, and game on after that. I think they do get it done, though. But again, be very, very careful if you're Bayer Leverkusen to assume that this title race is completely finished at this point with roughly 10 games left to go.
Yeah, I'm saying 2-1 Bayer Leverkusen. And then on the flip side, Dortmund versus Frankfurt. How do you see that match?
Again, we don't know what to expect from Dortmund, but they are the better side here. They need to keep pace to keep that distance between them and Leipzig for the 4th place spot, although 5th might get them into Champions League. So give me Dortmund 2-1. Not convincing, but again, I think they find a way.
I'm going to say 1-1 Frankfurt and Dortmund. Now, Inter Napoli play this weekend. Both had Champions League slates. or games this week. Do you think Inter are going to be able to bounce back here after a tough loss? The league is already tied up, but do you think Napoli get a point here, or are we saying Inter are going to bounce back and handily beat Napoli?
I think Inter bounced back. They're clearly the class of Serie A, and they've shown that year and year, throughout the year. They didn't play terribly against a really good Atletico Madrid either, and so I think they still have more in the tank than Napoli. I think Inter win 2-0 here.
2-0. I'm going to have to agree here with the 2-0 win. And then last, Ligue 1, Rennes versus Marseille, two teams that are climbing the table right now in Ligue 1, both in really good form. Who do you think wins that match?
Marseille absolutely drubbed last round. Yeah, and which I thought Villarreal was going to give them a game. I'll take Marseille 2-1 here.
I'm going to say 2-2 here. I think they'll draw, and that will be a good result, but a really fun game. Now, that is it for our predictions. We will see you on Sunday night. Just for housekeeping, go ahead and, if you're listening to this on podcast form, go ahead and give us a 5-star review and download the episode. If if you like the betting show or the full-time roundup stuff on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe and like the videos there. And we will see you in the next episode.